Everything that God does is based on covenant. And when you take the Bible, it's divided into two parts: the Old Testament, or the Old Covenant, and the New Testament, or the New Covenant. So He is the God of covenants. He is the sovereign administrator of covenants. Now, what is a covenant? A covenant is a solemn, binding agreement. And it is made by passing through pieces of flesh. So you go through the whole Bible, which I've done because I've written a book on covenant and the covenants, but you go through the whole Bible and you see that He made a covenant. Abraham made a covenant, others made covenants. So they made a covenant. The first time that you actually see the cutting of covenant is in Genesis chapter 15. And this is where God has told Abraham in Genesis chapter 12 that He's going to make of him a great nation. Well, if you're going to make of him a great nation, he has to have a child. And He says, one born in my house, my servant, could be like a son. He could be my heir. God says, no, come here. And He takes him out. And He says, count the stars if you are able. And He says, so shall your seed be. Singular, not plural. Abraham says, how am I going to know? And He says, you get these animals, you bring them, you kill them, you cut them in half, you lay them each opposite one another, and then God came down in a smoking oven and a flaming torch, and He passed between the pieces. You can think of like an 8 where there's no end. And He passed through the pieces. So He makes a covenant. Then Galatians says 430 years later, He makes another covenant. And that covenant is the law at Sinai. That covenant is a covenant that has to be kept on both sides. The Abrahamic covenant is unconditional. God walks through the pieces, Abraham doesn't. Blessings and cursings, you obey, you get blessed. You disobey, you get cursed, you get judgment. And so that law becomes a schoolmaster, as Galatians 3 says, to shut us up until faith in Messiah comes, until faith in Yeshua, until faith in Jesus, the Christ, the Messiah comes. And then you have the Davidic covenant in there. So in 2 Samuel chapter 7, you have the Davidic covenant, and in the Davidic covenant, God makes a covenant with David. Messiah is going to sit on your throne. You will have someone that will sit on your throne forever. Then, in Jeremiah 31, where God is getting ready to destroy Jerusalem because they've disobeyed, and He's told them over and over and over again, and they have not listened. So in Jeremiah, before he does this, he says, I'm going to make a new covenant with you. Not like the covenant which I made with you when I took you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage, my covenant which you broke. And you even see Moses taking those tables of stone and smashing them down because they broke the covenant. And he says, but this is the covenant that I will make with you in those days. I will take my law and I will write it on your heart. No longer on tables of stone, but I will write it on your heart. I will be your God. You will be my people. And I will forgive your sins and remember them no more. And so here is a covenant that is written on tables of flesh, our heart. And here is a covenant in Ezekiel 36, will expand that puts His Spirit within us. Here is a covenant that grants us forgiveness of sins. You say, but if you don't put men under the law, they can't obey God. Oh, they can, because the new covenant puts His Spirit within us, puts the law within, so that His Spirit within me causes me to walk in His statutes, enables me to keep his commandments.